really prioritize that race when you think that that's the way that the cards are going to go. But now that we know that that's not true, there's a lot of people that are really wanting to support Sam and Mitchell's seats down here because basically there are 2 open seats, and there are still a lot of people down in this area that are moderates, that are Democrats, and they want a good candidate that can carry the message for another generation. So that's why we're here. I have these things that I call unconditional wins. Just by running, these are some wins that you can have. You can register new voters. That's a win. Because we know that voter apathy, and we know about Sam. Sam cares about elections. One of the things in his bio is he started voting right when it was possible, right when they changed the voting age to 18. So Sam, were you like 19 years old or 18 and a half?
I think it was 17.
Yeah, so you're like 19 years old.
Or 70.
Yeah.
I thought it was 70.
Yeah, so he started voting and he says he's never missed an election. Well, to have good voting turnout, you have to have candidates on the ballot. That's what the evidence says. If you have races that are won just by filing and you've never had to be on the ballot because all you had to do is file. That's what happened to me this last 2 years ago. Nobody voted against me. So nobody got to vote for me. That meant that all of that district, all of 16, Senate District 16, I wasn't knocking doors on all of those doors. I wasn't interacting with everybody. And now I interact with everybody a different way, but I didn't interact with them in that way. And so what evidence says is that when you have contested races, voters are more engaged and you have more voter activity. So that's another second win, is you register voters, you have a reason for voters to show up and that voter apathy goes down. Another thing that can happen in this race in particular that I'm really, really excited about is that we can run this race, and Sam can run this race in the McLean County Democratic Party, the Grady County Democratic Party, the Garvin County, Cleveland County. We get to try things politically that we haven't tried before. So we're out here in the rural areas. So knocking doors and all of that kind of stuff that you would do in Cleveland County when all the little houses are right next to each other and I can walk up and down around Campus Corner and close to campus and, woo, it's Graefe here, woo! Y'all, she's a big shot. I'm so glad that she's here. So the other thing that we can do, an unconditional win, we can do things like, instead of trying to go knock a door to flip a vote, to turn a Republican vote into a Democrat, it takes you visiting those doors 4 times in Edmond and Norman, like Foreman's going to have to do. Instead of knocking the door 4 times to try to have these conversations over and over, which you cannot do in these rural areas. You wear yourself out, you don't have enough people. What we can do is we can do things like do a call or a postcard and say, hey, 4 days from now, Sam's going to be at the coffee shop or he's going to be at the barbecue shop. Come by and see him. He's going to be at the library every Friday to visit with voters in Dibble or Blanchard or wherever in his district. He can designate places for people to come see him. And we can use other technologies to drive out the message and to try to drive people into those conversations with him. And we can do an active voter registration effort with our county parties and find people that will be supportive of this message to register to vote who aren't voting now. And we know we need to increase 10 to 20% of our numbers. So whatever the number of Democrats that we have in this Senate District 43, we need to register 20% more every election. And if we do that, in time, that gap will close. The other unconditional win, just by Sam running, this is a win that we have. We can train future leaders and future candidates. So young Democrats will have a place to come help out. College Democrats will have a place to come out. We've got 16, 17, 18-year-old kids that are in Purcell, in Dibble, in Blanchard, in Duncan, who really want to be active. Now they have a campaign to learn. Because as you know, politics is on the ground learning. You don't read about books. It's like, we just had on the ground learning experience about 2 weeks ago when we're labeling our invites to this event. The stinking labels weren't sticky. You know, they wouldn't stay on the envelope. So little bitty things like that are all the things that you learn by, they also made this remittance envelope. Guess who taught me how to do that? Lauren, right back there. She's, I didn't have any remittance envelopes, so all we did is just stick this on the front, and we made the little slip in the middle, and that way you don't have the printer because we didn't have enough money to do that. So politics is learned on the ground, especially races. And so when we have candidates running, the next generation can learn. Mark Mann is right back there. He's running for Senate District 46, right? 46. And he and I were young Democrats together almost more than 30 years ago. So when you run, you have places, a lab to learn in. And that's what his race allows us to do, is to train it. And now that we have a race, all of the Democrat machine can start directing young people and next gen people to be able to kind of take over the reins. The other thing on the research and development part of it, one thing that I was talking about this whole deal about Biden and should he drop out, and everybody I saw on social media talking about it, and I was using an example of two cars. One car is good, looks good on the lot, but you get it on the road and it's going to blow you up, and it's going to run off the road, and it's going to have road rage, and it's going to be an awful, scary ride. The other car might break down a little bit, but you've got AAA and you can get a good loaner, and you're going to be fine. So anyway, it caused this whole car metaphor, and it got off the rails, and everybody started extending the metaphor beyond what it made any kind of reason at all at some point. But it hit me. The research and development for a car, it takes 15 years to put a new car on the road. It takes a long time. Well, research and development for candidates, if you can visualize, I want this kind of candidate on the menu. Well, that was something that was started 15, 20 years ago. For me and Mark, it started 30 years ago. And so these campaigns, local campaigns, are the research and development for the candidates that you want to have in higher office. So if we don't do this, we don't have people ready to do those other things. You can't just go to a vending machine and say, oh, we need somebody to run for United States Senate, and then just start calling people 3 weeks out. Or like you play with your Legos and you think, oh, I can visualize this car, and then you go, okay, tomorrow, where's the car? That's not how it works. It's not that way with candidates either. You really have to have a long-term game plan, and you have to run your leg of the race and pass it on to the next generation. And so by Sam giving us this awesome choice, we get to rebrand the Democratic Party for what it means to be a Democrat in Senate District 43. The same thing with Mitchell. He's going to be able, or Mitch, you like Mitch, don't you? Okay. It's kind of like Auntie Mary calling you Mitchell, isn't it? So Mitch, same thing. By him running, the Democratic message is being carried out, and we are in a message war. We don't get to, I almost pissed. We don't get to talk policy in Oklahoma. We know their policy. Their policy is Project 2025. We know that. That's their policy. We don't get to say, but we would like this instead. We are in a communications battle because we don't have enough people pulling on our end of the rope in Oklahoma to change their plan or to modify it. So we've absolutely got to get more people on our road. How are we going to do that? It's when people invest in our message, invest in our vision, and how will they get there? If they hear it and see it and get to know what our message is. So we're in a messaging campaign, and that's an automatic win. When you run a campaign like these two men are doing here in this area, that message is getting out. If Sam did not run, the Newcastle paper would not be carrying a message of a different view, a better view of how things could go in Oklahoma. But because he ran, now when people are thinking about the political races at the local level from now until November, there's going to be a Democratic voice in the conversation. And that is a win for all of these Democrats that are so miserable when they hear all of this racket happening and there's no counter narrative. There's no counter voice. There's no counter communication. So when y'all are investing in campaigns, that's the offensive game plan that you're investing in. And those are the calculated wins that we can guarantee. And then on the watch party night, we can look. There's this other thing that happens. How many of y'all have used Van? You've got on Van? Okay. So when you get on Van and you start walking down the street, you see all these little dots, right? And sometimes in the country, the dots are really spread out. And you're like, okay, I'm going to drive my car 2 miles to go talk to this other Democrat, okay? Well, when you show up to vote and you have candidates voting, that little dot is a fresh dot. It's fresh data. It's a fresh address. We know that they're there. We know that they're voting. When you go 1 or 2 or 3 cycles with no Democrat on the ballot, it's almost like you just have to start over. It's like dried up soil, has no nutrients, doesn't have any moisture. You're going to have to re-till the whole thing, re-add nutrients, do all of that hard work again. So it's an unconditional win for all of us to know who. It's like a roll call. It's like we call it a roll call vote in the Senate. Every election is a roll call vote. So we know now, because Sam is running, when it's roll call vote in November, all these little blue dots get to show up, and we can see data-wise, oh, there they are. That's who we have to work with. And that's what we're going to celebrate, because we know that there's going to be more blue dots showing up than anybody thought was possible. And we know that we're going to persuade some people to join us, and that's a win. So that's what we're all in for. That's what you're donating money for. That's what you're donating energy for. That when you talk about this race, this is what you can tell people that that's what we're doing. We're changing the message, and we're changing the offensive game plan that can be used throughout the state. Because things that we do, let's say we do the phone banking thing and the postcard thing, and Sam has an event at the library, and we think 10 people are going to show up and 50 people show up. Well, put that in your back pocket and use it up in Perry. Use that over in some other, area. And that's that kind of stuff. You can't do that unless you go through all this process. So that's what people are investing in. It's a new offensive game plan that can take our message out to Oklahoma. The other thing about it is and this is what Adam told me too, when you're running a statewide race, let's say you're running for governor, or you're running for United States Senator, or you're running for lieutenant governor or attorney general, and you look down on Senate District 43, if you haven't had a campaign running, then you have to rebuild all of that. You don't have a county party. It's really, really hard. But assume that you've done that, and say now, 2 years from now, somebody's running as a Democrat for a state party race. They can look down on Senate District 43's race, and they can see what they can go and get and what that margin of error is. And if they can just slice off a little bit of that margin of win for the Republicans, so let's say they were winning, 20 points. If they win only by 17 points in Senate District 43 because of the work we've done, and you add up that 3% in all of these red areas, that's enough to put you over the top in Oklahoma, and that's what we haven't done. And so that's why it's critical to carry that Democratic message in each of these races with the well-branded professional campaign that we can be proud of, because it'll shave points 2 years from now, and that's another unconditional win. So it is my honor right now to introduce to you the candidate for House District 20, and then he's going to introduce Sam. So this is what I know without reading anything about this, I guess without being prepared. So you were in the military or currently in the military. He was in the military. He has a family, an adorable, wonderful family that is protected from the public limelight because people are mean. And we just want to, so that's why you're not seeing the typical photo of this, you know, cheesy dad with his kids and everything. But he is a daddy, and he served our country. And when you served our country, did you take an oath that you would protect and defend the United States Constitution?
Against all enemies.
Foreign and domestic. And that's why I'm proud that you're running, because the Constitution protects all of us. It protects us from terrorism. It protects us from domestic violence. It protects us from law and order. It protects us from bullies. And I'm grateful that you're running. So would you come up here and tell us about yourself and then introduce him?
All right. Heard from Mary Bourne, Warren Coffin with Democrats. We're down at Libby's. We're getting ready to go live with Mitch Jacob.
Thank you, Senator Warren. So yes, my name is Mitchell Jacob. I'm going to change the way I was going to start this, and we're just going to start with a little bit about me and then jump into a quick thing, and then I'll get out of your way so you can listen to the super awesome Sam Graefe talk for a little while. So Mitchell Jacob, I'm running for House District 20. I was born in Tulsa. I'm a fourth generation Oklahoman. My wife right there, Rocio, we have a baby who's a fifth generation Oklahoman, and we have 5 kids total together. It's a blessed, wonderful, wild, busy house. I currently go to OU Law, just up the street up there. I have 1 more year. I graduate in May. I intern as a public defender 3 days a week, campaign 3 days a week, and sometimes I'm a dad, sometimes I'm a husband, and other times I'm just a good old Oklahoman. But the reason I decided to run, I can do this very quickly, I just have 3 questions that became the pillar of my campaign. Are you proud that Oklahoma is ranked 49th out of 50 in education? No. Do you support the systematic dismantling of the public school system here in this state? No. And do you believe that your taxpayer dollars should be used to fund private school tuition for families with no income cap, and more than 35% of that money goes to families that have a household income of $150,000 or greater? No. I certainly do not. And I believe that your children or grandchildren and my children, they just need to be able to do 3 things. Read, write, and do basic arithmetic. Not asking that much, but we are trying to take that away and create an entire generation of uneducated children who cannot read or write or in any way contribute to their own future. And I decided to push back against that. If nothing else, I will be a piece of sand in the gears of the machinery that are trying to crush the future generation. If that is the best I can do, I will be proud to have done it. But you didn't come here to listen to me. You came here because Sam Graefe has decided to stand up and run for Senate District 43, push back against, as we know, lots of rhetoric and hatred that is coming out, telling people that they shouldn't be here if they don't look like us, look a certain way, if they don't have a marriage or relationship that conforms to certain norms, and so much that is either false, misleading, or should just not be true. And it is my distinct pleasure to just have Sam Graefe come up and speak with you this evening.
Thank you, Mitch. And if I could answer why would I volunteer to do this, knowing that I'm campaigning in 80% Republican like Grady County, it's because of Mitch. Mitch has been prepared. He decided to run some time ago. He had his campaign organized, and he constitutes 50% of the voters in Senate District 43. And we're working together. The last 2 Mondays, we've been phone banking together. the synergy of both of us. Of course, House District 20 is more subdivisions. It still has rural areas. Mine is going to be a challenge, as Mary just described. There's a lot of long driveways, and some of those driveways, as Steve Jarman and I found out, there's some signs that say it's protected by Smith and Wesson. So it's pretty hard to drive down that driveway and have a satisfactory encounter at the door. It's a different world. There's been folks in the Rural Association in the Democratic Party trying to say, what are we going to do? And as Mary said, we've got to get out there and say there's a candidate so the Republicans don't win it by filing. You realize that there were 21, I think, or is even more than that, Republicans won by filing. We had a few Democrats that were incumbents that won by filing. That's only because they had really strong majorities and nobody wanted to contest them. They knew that they would lose in some of the popular areas in Oklahoma City and in Norman, for instance. It's not so in this race, but that's what I've set out to do. Quite honestly, I was going to either run for House District 42, which is my particular area around Dibble all the way to Purcell. It's the House of Representatives south of Mitchell's. Steve ran for that last year. Steve Jarman, stand up. Appreciate you. Steve and I drove. Steve knocked doors. By the way, that's one of the techniques I'm going to recommend that we all do, especially if we're in a little bit farther areas out in the pastures. And it doesn't hurt this kind of weather when you're, for me personally, I can't knock doors until it's a little lower than 85 degrees. It just doesn't work for my body style and some of the medications. And that's true of a lot of folks. You know, we can still participate as volunteers. Let me tell you the story about why I've said that I will run. On top of that, I came 5 years ago from Moore to a little place out here in the country. Before that, when I moved down here in 2012, I made a conscious choice to join the folks of Oklahoma. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. It was 60 years there. I've been here 12, so you can do that math. I figure that this is my best race, and I'm going to give it my all now that I've got all the support of the people around here. Many of you I've known for those 12 years, conventions, participating in the party itself. My precinct in Moore is close to the tornadoes on South 4th Street, but I was the precinct, both the inspector and the voting side of things, but also the precinct chair. Precinct chairs are supposed to be out there knocking doors, getting people to join you. What I found when I went through Van was that by the numbering system, every 4, every 2, or every 8, whatever your neighborhood is in the subdivision or addition, there were so many people that had nobody in that household that were registered. 50% of those people were not registered. So one of the ambitions and goals of this campaign is to try to fill in the empty houses. So when we're going around today, our cell phones can be a guide for those that are not registered. I don't suggest you use your phone, but certainly you can say to them, this is the website. I can even text it to you, but we'd really want you to register to vote. Obviously, you've talked to them a little bit when you're door knocking, and you want to make sure that those independents and Democrats are the ones you really want to convince to get registered. We have a lot of challenge in terms of age groups. We need to work those. We've been saying that for years and years. The young Democrats gain and our staffs are getting younger. We appreciate that, Laura. And folks at the convention, there's a lot more young folks joining the party. One thing we do find when we knock doors is they're so happy, especially knocking for Steve in Purcell particularly. They said, we haven't had any Democrat candidates knock on our door. Some were like gleeful. They were just beyond themselves. And as we do that, and I hope we'll be able to develop some teams, as I said, I recommend, because I'm a big guy, I kind of intimidate people when I get to the door. So I like to knock a door with a female along with me, or at least another person. So, and if somebody is driving, it makes the task that much easier. By the way, Mary says I have to have a persona. I don't normally wear this, but she built an avatar for me that surprised me beyond belief. And I'm so indebted to Senator Mary that for all that she's done. She kind of picked me up from saying, okay, I'm not just filing to be on a Democrat on the ballot.
Can we have an applause for her?
Yeah.
So I just want to fill it in a little bit just about our, you stay right here. Okay, yeah. So I was on the phone with him and I said, okay, every candidate has to have a costume. I said, my costume was a royal blue jacket. Always, I kind of backed off of it, but when I was first running and I really wanted people to know that I was running, I had a bright blue, kind of this color. That's why I'm wearing this one. Sandy Garrett, we worked with Sandy Garrett. What was her? Red. So she always wore red and white. She also passed out the little peppermint stripedy candy at that red and white peppermint candy because she wanted people to think red and white Sandy Garrett. And I worked for her finding red cars in parades from teachers that she would ride in all over the freaking state. And I was calling people, do you have a red car? Do you have a red car? So she taught me people need to see, when they see you, they think, something. So I said, okay, well, mine's going to be this, bold blue. And my mama, before she died, I have this cup in my house of Nancy Pelosi at the big table pointing at Trump, standing up, saying, all roads lead to Russia or something like that. And then, and all the generals are like, well, she has a blue jacket on. And every time my mama saw that cup, she goes, is that you? And I'm like, no, it's not me in the presidential conference room yelling at generals. But because I had the same shaped hair in blue, that was my costume. And so my mom was even associating me with that thing. So I told Sam, what's your costume? What do you like to wear? And he likes to wear plaid shirts. And so I was like, okay, get all the blue, red, white, blue plaid shirts you can find. And I ordered him one. It's in my purse. And I have one that I bought for him. But he did. And so that's his, and then he has this white hat, which I love. And so from this, we created little social media avatar things that you'll see later. That's this kind of cartoony Sam with a beard and a hat and a plaid shirt and Sam for Senate.
If you have your phone handy, go ahead and go to your Facebook and pull up
Sam
for Senate SE43.
Yeah, it's on
Facebook. That little sheet of last minute.
But you'll see that little guy, and we're going to be able to use that all different kinds of ways on T-shirts or whatever. That's more of a social media thing. And then yard signs and things are going to be a little bit different. We're still trying to get that together. But so we just and then when you showed up for your photos, he had his plaid shirt on, he was knocking doors. So you'll see that with him, that I think that, and then I realized because you're a mechanical engineer.
Yeah, I've done it all. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, Sam's a fixer. He's not a fighter. And he wants to fix what's wrong in politics. He wants to fix what's wrong at the state capitol. He doesn't want to fight about it. He wants to fix it. And that is consistent with his disposition, his calmness, his, lack of just being extremely confrontational, reflective, and supportive. And I think, if a handyman, a political handyman came up to your door and said, "Hey, I'm here to fix politics," I would trust Sam at the door because we trust. He looks just like a regular good handyman would come up to your house and fix something. So that's the whole idea about what we're trying to pull together with Sam's campaign, because there's a lot of, he's trying to get over name recognition and who is this person, and it'll drive that message back into he actually worked at inspecting election precincts.
Since 2008.
Yeah, so he wants to keep things running, and that's why he was in the oil and gas industry. He wants to keep things running smoothly. He doesn't want to have all the drama and all of the conflict. So, and this is Sam. And then we were trying to figure out his last name. We're going to do this through social media. We might do it with some of y'all. When you first saw Sam's last name, can we go around and say how y'all tried to say it? Let's see. Okay. Here's his last name, Graefe. Who wants to go first? How did you first say it?
Graefe.
Graefe. You said Graefe.
You knew it.
Graefe. Graefe.
Silent E.
Yeah. It's Graefe. Yeah, it's Graefe.
Or Graefe,
Or
or
Graefe.
in the old country, it's Graefe.
Graefe.
It's a G-R-A with an umlaut F-E.
Yeah.
Like I tell all the kids when I was substitute teaching, just call me Mr. G. So the name recognition, they'll have Sam as the first thing on the ballot itself.
And when we were talking, he said, "Just call me Sam." So I like that. I think just call him Sam. He's here to fix things, not to cause a bunch of fights. And I think that will bring a comforting political voice to the table in this next election. So that you said that persona, that's his persona. That's what we're trying to pull together.
She had a bow tie on there. I'm going to have to find a blue bow tie to go.
Now that was the graphic designer that did it.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to worry about that.
Let me finish a little bit more about where I started. My father, well, actually my mother as well. I have 4 grandparents that were all immigrants. They landed about 1909, 1910, all 4 of them. First generation, one was in Chicago, my mother and my father's family settled in a little meat market area north of the packing plants and the stockyards in St. Louis. Historical generations were meat processors. In German, it's Schlachtermeister. First language I actually heard was more German than English. So my Canadian mother said, no more German is going to be spoken over my babies. So we had a net nuclear family. My father was the oldest of 9 kids. All 9 were college educated as first generation in the United States. My dad was a Depression era law student. He came back to the family business because every other lawyer was pretty much chasing ambulances. I'd heard that story all my life. And all my aunts, the 6 aunts, all very strong women. One was the very first lady lawyer in the St. Louis County area back in the early 50s. Another aunt was the very first architect in the community of St. Louis, first graduate from my alma mater, also Washington University in St. Louis. Very forward, strong women in the family. My mother was educated in art and then became a teacher when I was a 2nd grader, in fact. I grew up stacking soup cans as Mom was checking people out. The nuclear family, all 15 of my cousins worked through that grocery store, learned what hard work was, just like farm families do, and then went to college. Because you know what? College back then was a lot easier than working 12 and 14 hours like we all did as young people. So, college educated, I went to Washington University in St. Louis. I was a cooperative student in the oil refinery at Shell Oil. With that experience, I got out in 4 years. I had a great opportunity to work for a vice president of what is now CenterPoint Energy. As far as the gas supply, he handled all the contract, a vice president. Brand new, actually, I started before I graduated college full-time because I'd been a co-op. I had accumulated enough work hours. I got registered as a professional engineer, which may or may not have helped my career, but at least I established the testing level that said after 3 years or 6 years normally that you're certified to perform for the public. My career went to the gas pipeline, as I said. They were bought out. They were a subsidiary of the Missouri Pacific Corporation. Very profitable business. In the pipeline, they had a cement plant. My boss actually designed and built one of the early ammonia processes for natural gas. It was a great opportunity. And one of the things that brought me to Oklahoma was working in that pipeline. Somewhere out there in Chickasha, we had a good field that had been explored but couldn't be completed. I traveled there kind of anonymously because back in the day, you didn't want to tell the competitor too much about where you're going or what you found. And one of the dilemmas was that they didn't know how to complete the well because it was deeper than they had ever drilled, and it was high sulfur gas. So chemical engineer, my boss being a PhD chemical engineer, we took it back to our college and they decided how to complete that well with whatever barium sulfate kinds of solutions they typically did. They had to be reformulated and made it possible. That kind of got me to Oklahoma for the first time. I kind of liked it. Realized it was a whole lot warmer than St. Louis is with continuous ice storms. So when it came time for an opportunity in 2012 to come down here, jobs were kind of bad back then in the St. Louis market area. I worked for AT&T 10 years prior to that, coming down here. And pretty much they completely filled the building of a call center of highly technical people, guys that had spent 20 years in the comm sites of the military, some of them keeping the flat tops, the aircraft carriers in shape and electronically. It was an environment we developed the DSL, how to build it, how to troubleshoot it. And of course, as most companies do, they offshored it. And we were all looking around saying, well, there's not another better place for all of these technical folks. I went back to school. Went back to school in 2006, trying to look for actually first a PhD attempt and then an attempt to get a healthcare license. And I did. I graduated in 2009 from our community college. So I went for a bachelor's and a master's in management and then an associate's degree. Not your normal path, but a healthcare license was worth something if only your body could do it. So transition from being a student respiratory therapist, graduated fine. It's just they were looking for people who could do 4 12-hour days. And if you're in your 50s or you're older, 4 12-hour days. It was a way of early retiring the higher paid health providers, nurses, and everybody else. So again, what am I going to do? I did a lot of things. One of the things that's true along the way is Obama's election was the first thing in Missouri that I worked as a judge, or essentially an inspector. In Missouri, they have a little different scheme. You're paired up Republican and Democrat. I was an independent. I said I vote both ways. I'm more of the middle. I tend to the Democrat side, and obviously in Oklahoma, I'm a moderate, as it says, consensus moderate. I'm trying to resolve things we all need. In the middle, we need things that we don't have to fight about. We don't have to fight about the Bible. It's a nuisance. It's a waste. let's get back to what we really want to do. Get out of the 49th out of 50 in education. That's my number one of 3 action items. The obviously we all can go on that for some time. With a master's degree, I certified in intermediate and advanced math. With that, I substitute taught, long-term taught, and I have one recommendation. It probably don't be a bill, but for any senator or representative, they really need to build teachers' lesson plans and go through a
Parent-teacher
parent-teacher at least once.
Yeah.
Then they can write laws about what we can do, and writing and approving the standards that they have approval over. So.
Well, Sam, would you like to hear, meet each person?
I think we would,
Yeah, because we would really like to know who showed up and a little bit about yourself. So we'll start with Matthew.
What do you want us to say?
Just say what part of this region you're from and your role in the Democratic Party.
My name is Matthew Lucas. I am from Norman, and I currently serve as one of the State Affirmative Action Officers for the Oklahoma Democratic Party.
Thank you, Matthew, for being here.
My name is Tim Hooker. I'm also from Norman, Cleveland County, and currently I'm just a voter.
Yeah. And you ride floats with people.
I do. I ride floats. Call me. I ride floats.
We've ridden floats and worked in parades and worked
Yes.
together. So, dang. Okay.
I'm from Falls Valley, and I'm a voter.
And tell how you found out about this event.
Through my dentist.
So isn't that wonderful? That's why you run campaigns, is so that Glenn will have something to share with somebody, and somebody has a place, and then I get to meet them. So all of that happened because Sam was running. Okay, so let's next.
Candace Blaylock, I'm from Falls Valley. Big Democrat since I retired from the bench in 2006.
Tell us what office that was.
District Judge,
District Judge.
Garden, McLean, and Cleveland County.
Well,
McLean
great.
and Cleveland.
We'll send you to work.
Justin Sprouse. I live in Oklahoma City, and I told my mom about this event, Candace Blaylock.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wanted her to get the local party, and I worked on Kendra Horn's campaign. I actually volunteered, and I was an paid employee. And this is my hometown. Well, actually, Garvin is. So.
Well, good. We're so glad to have you. Thank you for being here.
I'm Stephanie Smart. I'm from Norman as well.
That's right.
I'm a voter, and I was a former voter registrar in the days before you registered at the tag office. So that was my first introduction to working.
Well, good.
She should say that she's also very familiar with Lindsay, having been a CPA there and now moved to Norman.
Yeah. Well, good. Thank you. Let's grab these two back here. This, and then we'll go back. Okay.
Okay. I'm Elizabeth Big. I'm a Norman resident. I started back in politics working for Cal Hobson. So just like, Sam said, as soon as I could, register to vote. It just changed to 18, and I felt kind of cheated. That was just right. But I voted every year since, and it's always been Democrat.
Thank you for being here. Yay. Next.
All right, they're just finishing up the conversation with the kickoff with Sam Graefe. We've got a couple other candidates that we're going to talk about, but I think we've heard enough for this evening, and I appreciate everybody being able to come on. This is a live event held at Libby's out in Goldsby, Oklahoma. And thanks everybody for joining on and coming on here and listening to Sam. Please give him your support. Like they said, there's 3 ways that you can support. You can support with your time, you can support with your finances, and you can support with your deeds. So if you don't mind, please show some support if you want to give financial, go to Act Blue. And I'll try to make sure that I put it on our Facebook and X accounts and all the other social medias on how to get with Sam so that we can get some support for Sam in the future, and especially financial support. But until the next time we come on Coffee with Democrats, everybody, thank you for joining us, and please be safe.